Hey everybody, Andy from Tennis Euphoria. So Head have brought back the Instinct line in their family of rackets, which is quite busy. It looks to be a relatively soft launch. There isn't masses of photos from them around their ranges, which include the Instinct, and it looks to contain things like the PWR oversized frame, rackets for intermediates, aging and beginner players, but there is the MP within the line that looks to be quite interesting. You'd be forgiven to think or wonder where this racket fits. There are, after all, plenty of other 300 gram, 100 square inch, very decent head frames out there. But based on specs, with that thick beam, this is very much targeted to compete with these frames. The market leaders in this space, these power orientated 100 square inch 16 by 19 frames, would of course be the Babolat Pure Drive at #1 spot, and then arguably you'd have the Yonex E-Zone 100 sitting at #2 spot. But you have very good other frames there too, like the Dunlop FX 500 and the Wilson Ultra V4 100, which I reviewed quite positively. And all of those frames do a good job in this space, so there is stiff competition. I strung mine with Babolat Pure Hurricane, which was very much done to compare this frame to those previous mentioned, because I've reviewed them all and hit with them all with Hurricane previously. The first thing to note for anybody who has played with the previous Instinct MP is that this is an improvement on that previous. Head have been able to make quite economic updates and have been aggressive in the price point on this, more on that later, by taking that previous frame and, as far as I can tell, changing absolutely nothing apart from adding Auxetic and their flagship material into the layup. It's the version 1 of Auxetic, so it's just going to be there in the hoop. It won't be in the handle. And Auxetic, as we know across a lot of head frames, seems to add to some stability, arguably increases the sweet spot. So it is a quality material that's been added, but without anything else changing. Check out that price point though. It's very competitive next to the E-Zone and the Pure Drive. Against the FX 500 and the Wilson Ultra V4 100, then it's closer to their price points because they're due updates and those frames are starting to come down in price. Now, given the slightly softer RA on this at 64, there might be some people who would consider this frame as a softer power option, so maybe the value of the frame would appeal to the Clash player too. And I do wonder whether the Instinct is having a bit of a pop at the Clash user. Perhaps Head have tried to make a stable and relatively comfortable power frame that will appeal to intermediate players, or players who perhaps have arm issues, and people who are perhaps not totally serious about tennis and want a semi-decent frame but don't want to spend the earth on it. So how does it play? It does play much better than the previous. The addition of that Auxetic is very welcome. The frame feels more stable, a little bit better dampened, and with a connection point with your sweet spot being sort of middle lower in your frame, you will notice quite a nice response. However, the previous edition's tinny feel is still there at times. You get a bit of that sensation coming through the handle, and you also, if you connect at the upper elements of the hoop, do notice some instability, and it still feels a little bit tinny next to some of the competition. I don't know why that is. I wondered whether there was a lack of graphene, or graphene 360 to be more specific, a lack of the spiral fibers, which has helped to keep the price down in manufacture on this. And ultimately, I don't know the answer, but if you hit this compared side by side to the E-Zone 100 or the Pure Drive, and both with the E-Zone and the Pure Drive, you do get more effective dampening, I feel. So there isn't really comfort gains compared to the new editions of those frames. And also I do think you get more power, easy depth and access to spin from the Pure Drive, and you get a lot more drive through power from the E-Zone 100. I also think that E-Zone 100 offers slightly better control with its relatively dense string pattern compared to its competitors. So I think the advanced player, and certainly the tournament player, will be hard pushed to pick this over a Pure Drive or an E-Zone 100 when they hit them side by side. Next to the Clash, then this does offer better control. I did find I could play with it quite effectively, both in terms of directional accuracy and depth control, and it does offer relatively easy access to depth and playability, and it certainly didn't hurt my arm even with Pro Hurricane strung at 53 pounds, which is quite a harsh string. So arguably it could compete with the Clash, particularly if you're a price sensitive buyer. And I do think the control is a little bit better, but I'm not sure that it would be as comfortable in the long term as your Clash. Um, the other thing is that if you were to hit this next to the Speed MP, for example, then you're going to get much better control, much better feel out of the Speed MP than you would with this Instinct MP. And the power difference is there, but it isn't actually that noticeable, particularly if you're stringing your Speed MP accordingly, with being mindful of getting a bit of power out of the string bed. So again, I struggle to see how someone who is at that advanced or tournament level would hit the Instinct alongside other frames that offer some power, but with some control, things like the Perset 100, the Speed MP, or the Dunlop CX 500 Tour, 400 Tour, sorry, and pick that over this. So ultimately, I think that this is a good value, generally okay frame that is certainly very applicable to intermediate players who are looking to advance their game. I actually think it's a really good racket for beginners who are perhaps fit, healthy, and have played a lot of sport in a wider sense and will get on okay with 300 grams. And I think it is okay for someone who's returning to tennis who isn't going to play that much but wants a relatively high performance frame at a good value point. I also think it's great that we've got a good value, decent frame out there in the market to stop people moving to pickleball and paddle, which seemingly is more accessible and is hurting tennis as far as I can see. So I think it is very, very good for people who do seem to be buying it. Retailers tell me that it is exactly that profile of person, someone who's price sensitive, perhaps isn't tournament, but not playing all the time, but is wanting an okay frame that plays generally good across all characteristics. Hope that was helpful. Lots of good reviews coming up. eZone 100 and the Clash Pro to review, Nordic Dots 100 version, a Zenith Tennis frame that have been sent to review. So if you like totally unbiased, unsponsored, honest reviews, subscribe to the channel for those upcoming ones and plenty more. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.